Welcome to Kettlebell Corner, where strength meets theory, where we take you on a deeper dive into all things kettlebells. I'm Jeremiah Waylon, and he's Roger Parks. And are you struggling with your press, wondering what to do? Is it the lift off? Is it the middle section where you collapse? Or are you just struggling with that lockout? Well, we have something for you in today's episode. Roger, what's up? Tell me
Yo,
about it. You're the press master. Press
am I
Master
now?
Press. That's your rap name. So
Well, I'm glad I
somebody who's
finally have
struggling
one.
with that's good. I don't know if you want to get a t-shirt or a clock or a kettlebell necklace. Let me know. We got the press. It's got problems. Where do we start? I know you always have a systematic approach to these things.
Generally, yeah, I've got a few big things. You know, this idea of low hanging fruit. Some things that I start with. Generally,
Okay, like what's one of the first low hanging fruits? I mean,
oh, you want
we
me to
all got
share?
yeah, like
Okay.
yeah. Is it an apple? Is it a pear? Is it a avocado? It's a fruit, people.
With everything that I coach, one of the first things I'm going to look at is your stance.
Okay.
It's it's your whole balance for the lift, and balance is really important. It allows you to move freely and well. So I want to look at your stance. Very, very common where there are press problems. I see too narrow. Every now and then I see too wide, but more often than not, I see too narrow. And we can get into the parameters of what an ideal stance might be. But this is, these are one of the things I look at. So I'm looking at stance width. The second thing I look at is what your shoulder mechanics are doing. Where is your arm in relation to your body? Are you trying to come straight out? So for example, if we were to draw nice straight lines, is your elbow going to be directly in front of your shoulder? Is it a little bit flared out? Are you trying to do this whole keep the forearm vertical thing with the bell? That's what we're often taught to do. And it's almost never the best thing to do. Almost never. And
And
I'm not going
almost
to say that very frequently.
yeah, and it almost never is vertical like they say when they demo what they're saying, you
No,
know?
I've never seen it. I've
And
actually never seen.
I gave up on just saying it.
Okay.
I don't even say
So
like, just what does it feel natural or no? Lean it in a little bit. Like
sure.
in.
So, when we're looking at efficient press paths, the vertical forearm's not the way to go. And we'll get into each one of these a little bit, but a really, really common one. I was just working with a client the other day who was pressing and keeping his shoulder blades pulled down and back. And he'd been told this by multiple trainers, by physical therapists, people trying to look out for him. But the reality is your shoulder blades just don't move that way. Your shoulders don't move that way. And you need a contribution of the shoulder blade, of the scapula, in conjunction with the motion of the humerus in order to get overhead. It's just, this is not
It's like a
controversial.
rhythm, right?
It is. So we'll talk about glenohumeral rhythm, but these are the big
I love that
big
band.
things. I think one of the last things that I look at is the clean. Does the clean set you up for success? So I guess we can knock some of these off one by one.
Yeah. Well,
Where do we start?
let's just start with the clean, because the clean is, I assume, going to lead into the stance.
Sure.
Right? Okay, so let's start with the clean. How do we approach that? I mean, we just cheat clean it, or two-hand clean it, or regular clean it? Does it matter?
As with all of these, we're doing our thought experiment and we have to have some context. So let's say somebody is trying to press a heavy bell, half body weight or higher. If you're struggling on a lighter bell, probably not struggling on a single, probably different solution. So let's say this is our solution that we're working toward. So how do you get that up? I really don't care. The two-hand clean is awesome when you're trying to go heavy. If you're training, you're doing volume, even if you're doing a bunch of singles, which I've been successful with in the past, I think you have too, then doing those cleans is helpful in order to get your body comfortable with the weight. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But there's nothing wrong with doing a two-hand clean. What's important is the placement of the bell. Where do you want the bell to rest in your hand? Do you want it more toward the thumb side or the pinky side of your hand? Is it resting in the right point of your forearm? There was something that we talked about just the other day, and we're going to do another episode on this or a short video to explain this. But I got a new bell right now. We're both looking to recertify our half body weight press. So for a strong first level 2. And I grabbed a 44 kilo bell that had a slightly different shape. The bells I usually get weren't available. These were cool. Let's give them a shot. It's a solid bell, but one part of the bell is actually shaved off a little bit. So it's not completely round. And that changes how the bell wants to rotate in my hand. It changes where the center of mass is. So in this case, if I'm actually doing a test, which way the flat part of the bell is makes a difference. Because when that flat part of the bell is toward me, the bell really wants to rotate out. And when it's away from me in the rack position, to be very clear, in the rack position, it wants to rotate toward me, and it's much safer, or it's much easier. It doesn't want to struggle against me. It doesn't want to fight. So if I'm looking to recertify and I need to get that bell up, I want to make sure that my clean is really factoring that in. My step, can I clean it right from where I am? Often you can. When you're using a 2-arm clean, when you're doing a regular clean, you may need to step in. So that's valuable time. That's going to disrupt your base of support. So you may want to opt for the 2-arm clean rather than the single. That's totally fine. But you want to factor all of these things in, and you want to have your clean down, and then you want to know immediately where your foot's going to be. Because the longer that bell is in the rack, the harder that press is going to get.
Yeah, so that could be getting used to that stance by, I don't know, practicing cleaning to the bell and then holding it right there, right? Just holding it in the rack position, feeling what feels good, maybe pressing with the lighter bell just to be like, oh, this is good, or it's too close to get that down. I mean, if you say the most common thing is too narrow, how do we find this difference?
So let's get into stance now, and this is going to change. The idea, this is a pet peeve of mine, is when you get these 3-minute kettlebell tutorials, and this is how you stand for the swing, and this is how you stand for the press. That can get you going, and there's value there. But the problem is when the information is presented in such a reductive way that people think this is the right way or the only way, and it breaks down when the conditions change. And one condition is a bigger bell. So let's just get this out of the way now. Imagine in your mind, I don't know where else you'd imagine.
I'm imagining.
So
it's happening.
You've got a bell, which is roughly a circle with a handle on it.
Yeah.
That bell is going to rest against your forearm. It's not going to pass through your forearm. So there's solidity of that bell. Let's assume, just for the sake of ease, that the center of mass of the bell is exactly in the center of the big globe, the big globe part of the bell. Let's say the center of mass is there. Well, the bigger the globe, the farther the center is going to be away from your forearm, because the amount of mass is going to increase. So when you think about the physical dimensions, let's just say the circle part of the 16 kilo bell versus a 48 kilo bell, you have two. If they were just balls, the 48 would be a much bigger ball, and it's going to be farther from your forearm. You have to account for that, which is one of the main reasons why a vertical forearm will not work with a heavy press.
Yeah, so and just real quick, just to be clear, in case people, I don't think you mentioned it, but this is with a cast iron kettlebell. It has nothing to do with the competition style bells.
Correct.
That's a different thing altogether.
And that is something that I've used in the past to get heavier, because with the competition bells, the center of mass is going to stay mostly in the same point, but the physical shape of the bell should change very, very little, if it changes at all. So that is an excellent point. Yes, we're talking about hard style bells, cast iron bells here. So you have to incorporate the physical dimensions of the bell into your stance. And though you're going to find that when you have your regular stance and suddenly you've got a really wide bell, you're going to feel off balance. It's going to want to pull your forearm off to the side. It may even want to pull your whole body off, especially if you're looking at half body weight or higher. So you're immediately going to need to widen your stance. You will need to widen your stance to find the balance of the bell. Roughly the center of mass of the bell is going to need to be over your foot. That would be ideal. You're also going to need to prepare for a little bit of a lean. And this is where this rehearsal comes in. It's very rare. I've never seen it actually when someone does a max press, a true PR, and they don't lean. I think if you can do a press without a lean, I don't think it's your PR.
Yeah.
Leaning's totally normal.
Too easy.
Yeah. leaning with a heavy press is totally normal, and within different margins, different people are going to have different standards there. But the degree of the lean is going to be up to debate. But everybody should be leaning if you're doing a real max press. So your stance should accommodate the physical dimensions of the bell. It should be wide enough where you lean that your chest can still stay within the margins of your feet. And that's, one thing you and I have talked about. Like, I've shown you that photo probably 20 times, where
It's your favorite photo. I'm surprised it's not on your holiday card.
But it's a for those who haven't seen it, it's a picture of Jeremiah, one press before he successfully pressed the bell, and he leaned too far over. His chest was way too far over his feet, and he just didn't have his body underneath him enough to support the press. And as soon as he leaned less, he got the press up. It wasn't a strength issue, it was a technique issue. And it's really easy to see from this photo, which is why I like it. And this photo was one of the things that solidified this idea. Make sure that your chest can stay, make sure your chest, when you lean, stays within the margins of your feet. So
don't lean too far that you're on the outer edge of your foot. If your shoulders are past the outer edge of your foot, you're probably going to be in trouble.
Yes.
And it might be a bent press at that point.
Your balance will be compromised. You'll get weaker, not stronger. So you want your stance there. Now, the problem with being too wide, if you think, oh, well, why don't I just get as wide as possible to, not take any chances? The farther your foot is from the direct line of the bell, the less efficient your force transfer is going to be. When we're dealing with gravity and we're dealing with standing, force is always going to come from the floor. So we need to get that force. And, if you don't believe me, go stand on ice or in outer space.
So I was trying to keep you down, man.
and try to press the bell. You need to have something to push against. So the more direct line the foot pushes force into the floor, and that force can go up into the bell, the more efficient the force transfer will be. The more force makes it into the bell, the more likely it is that you're going to do the press. So you don't want to, basically do the splits when you're doing these. So the trick is, get your stance as wide as necessary, not as wide as possible, as wide as necessary, or said another way, make your stance as narrow as possible, while including the margin for the bigger bell size and the fact that you're going to need to lean a little bit. And when you do a few reps and you take a look with your lighter bells, you're going to see how much you lean. A lot of this is going to be trial and error. For some bells, for example, the difference for me between a 32 kilo press and a 40 kilo press, and then let's say a 44 and then a 48, the lean between the 32 and the 40 is not that much. The 40 and the 44 not so much, but the 40 and the 48, or the 44 and the 48, there's a pretty significant lean. So there's going to be a certain point where you're going to notice your lean wants to increase quite a bit, at which point your stance should get wider. A lot of that is trial and error, unfortunately, but you do need to keep these things in mind. So as long as your chest can stay within the margins of your foot, you give yourself room to lean, the bell is over your foot, you should be good with your stance.
All right. Now, what about getting overhead, where when you press, you don't want to be, like you said, your client was pinning his shoulder blades down and trying to get overhead, and I suspect he gets to a point here and he's like, I can't go any higher, so his arms out in front.
That's exactly right. So there is something called glenohumeral rhythm. This is just anatomy. Again, this is not controversial. So if you're hearing this and you're thinking, oh, I was always told to keep my shoulder blade pulled down and back, you may either be misunderstanding what someone wanted you to do, or someone misunderstood what you needed to do and gave you some slightly misguided advice. So here's the deal with this. Roughly a third of your shoulder motion is going to be accommodated by your scapula doing what's called upward rotation. It's going to come forward, it's going to protract, and it's going to upwardly rotate. Yeah, it's kind of awkward to show. And don't forget that the scapula is actually at I want to say it's between a 30 and 40 degree angle. So it's not just flat. You did that for demonstration purposes if people are watching this. But it's gonna come around your side. For a shoulder blade to successfully rotate, go through its full range upward rotation, it should come to something called the mid axillary line, which is really just your armpit. So
Why
If
so
the
fancy before?
so if the shoulder blade is fully upwardly rotated, you should be able to feel it right around the armpit area. It should start to come forward and basically be on the side of your body. That upward rotation is going to accommodate a 1/3 of your press. So if you're looking to do a press and you're gluing those shoulder blades down, you're limiting yourself of 1/3 of your motion, but you're also potentially injuring yourself because you're still trying to push
Past that
the press up
blockade.
past that. Exactly right. So you're chewing up potentially ligaments and stuff like that. That's no good. So we're not suggesting that you don't have a good connection between the shoulder blade or the scapula and the rib cage. That's important, and you want to have good connection between those two things. But the way to get it connected is to not yank it down and back. It needs to move. One common thing that people get confused by as well is this idea, which I personally think is a bad cue. I think it's too for people to get it. I think they need to have really advanced body awareness, and I think that they really need to understand way more information than they should have to for a cue. So maybe for a coach or a very advanced practitioner, it's fine. Maybe I could tell you that, Jeremiah, that,
What, to keep my
hey,
shoulder blades down?
use your lat, press with your lat.
Oh
Maybe I
yeah,
could tell
yeah.
you that. But I generally think most people get this wrong. And I think what it leads to more often than not is trying to, when you have your arm up in the rack position and you pull it down, you feel that lat, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where most people get this wrong. So for whatever reason, it might be a perfectly good cue, but I think if people too often get it wrong, I would say let's not use that one. I think it's a little too specialized. Does your lat help your press? Absolutely. It's a shelf for you to set your arm on. When you squeeze the lat, you can actually bump the bell up a little bit if you know how to contract it. That breaks the inertia of the bell, which we'll talk about in a minute, or a few minutes rather. And it provides a good platform for the press. The lat connects the upper and the lower body, so it's a really good muscle to help stabilize. So in a way, it's fantastic advice. I just think the cue gets misconstrued, and more often than not, you get people yanking their shoulder blades down trying to get overhead, and they're not successful with the press, and they often injure themselves. I've had coaches I've worked with, hey, I really need some help, and within 2 minutes, it's, hey, are you trying to pull your shoulder blade down and back? Yeah, stop it. And like 2 minutes,
Yeah.
press is solved.
Problem solved. So if you've got that issue, we just solved it for you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And
Please
it is
give us a
common.
like and a follow then. It's gotta be worth something.
If you want an exercise to look up, we might have it somewhere, but a wall slide, often they're done with foam rollers or something that you can slide on the wall. It teaches you how to go into upward rotation and actually use these. So you can go on,
Kind of like pressing forward a little bit, right?
a little bit. Yeah, because you need to protract and upwardly rotate. So if you were to put your forearm on a foam roller, let's say start the foam roller right around face level and have it, on your forearm, learn how to push into it and up, and let the shoulder blades rotate up. Good way to practice that sequencing. You can practice getting your arms overhead. You can also use it as a little bit of feedback. Can you get your arms up without letting your ribs flare way up? Because another problem with the press is people want to go too far back. And then again, they undermine their integrity, they lose balance, and that's no good. And that happens with, like, that's one of your things. You're a taller lifter. You're much taller than I am.
As I was pressing this morning and videoing what I was doing, I noticed it and I decided that will not fly, sir. So I changed a few things and went from double bell to single bell. But subsequently, and I know we'll talk about a few exercises later on, but I just ended up doing rack walks to just kind of reinforce that sort of connection point or build the strength there for that,
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you before we move on about pressing, it's about pressing from your body, but using your forearm to press. So this is, to me, one of the most helpful things that once you get and understand what's happening in this, it makes the biggest difference in your press. So can you explain that a little bit, Roger, while I hold my fist at the screen like this?
It comes down to straight lines. And when a common event that people have, common experience is they've played pool or billiards. And the idea is lining up a billiard shot. If you're looking to strike the cue ball and send it directly into another ball that's directly in front of another pocket in front of you. No tricks. You don't need to hit it on the side. No bank shots, no nonsense. What you're looking to do is put the cue ball directly into the cue directly in the middle of the cue ball. And then you want the cue ball to go across the table and hit the center of the other ball to go into the center of the pocket. It's really all about straight lines. And it can be confusing when we look at these things, when we look at the shapes, because the shapes of our body and our anatomy can disguise what a straight line actually is. So, I think this is where the idea of the vertical forearm comes from. And I do think that some people will let the forearm completely come off the body, or the elbow flare, so there's no connection to the body. For me, I can keep my rack position very well intact and still have a lot of contact between my arm and my body, and I think that's important. But if you're looking at a straight line, forget about my anatomy or my individual geometry. Forget about the straight line of my forearm and all of that stuff. The straight line that goes from my foot through the center of mass of the bell. Remember, the center of mass of the bell is going to hang to the outside. It's not going to hang
it's not
straight
in
up.
your forearm.
No,
right?
It's not. So I'm immediately going to cheat the bell in toward the middle, because I want that straight line going up from the foot through the center of mass of the bell. And the center of mass of the bell is going to be over the forearm.
Yeah.
So rather than thinking about the hand, which is what I did when I first learned to press, I'm pressing through my hand. What I noticed at one point, it was very, very subtle, but the bell starts to chase your forearm. If I'm pushing through my hand is going up. That hand is a pivot because you've got a handle there. So as soon as my forearm moves, the bell is immediately going to swing directly underneath that handle. So if I'm pushing through my hand, that bell is in a sense chasing my hand, and I don't want that, because it's going to swing in toward the middle of my body. I want the press to go up and behind me. So I'm really looking to have kind of a spiral path where the bell goes up and back behind me. So pushing through the forearm, getting the hand really, really tight so that bell is wedged into my body, right? There's no wiggle room. I don't have a really weak grip on the handle, but I'm pressing through the forearm has made a ton of difference too. So I'm looking for the center of mass of the bell, the forearm, the hip, and the foot to ideally be in one straight line. That's how I get my most efficient press. And sometimes I need to lean to do that, because remember, that bell gets wider as I go out. So when I have that 48 in a rack, I can't keep those points lined up unless I lean over.
Yeah, if you don't give it the space. And I know we'll get into some of that a little bit more. So just to wrap up this section, you want the good clean. You want to be able to manage the weight. If you're going for half body weight press, don't be a scaredy cat and go and big ego and just two arm clean it, and then you'll be pretty happy with how it sits in there perfectly for you.
Yep.
Make sure you have your stance good and solid, and part of that is making sure that you're not wasting a bunch of time stepping in, and that you also are not too wide or too narrow, so that bell stays over your foot. And when you lean on these larger presses, you're not leaning outside the confines of that base position. And then finally, you're pressing from your body using your forearm, essentially keeping those straight lines, that cue to the cue ball center, to the 8-ball center, to the side pocket center.
Yep.
Side pocket.
One other thing that I will mention very, very fast is, if you're looking to lift a heavy bell, get comfortable with that bell. Do a lot of 2-arm cleans or cheat cleans, whatever you want to call them. Get that bell up for multiple reps. Not press, but just do the clean. If you can do a get up, if you can do a bend press, if you have access
squat
to
or something, right?
Exactly. For me, a big pattern that was helpful was the deadlift. And when you start to train, and for most people, this really starts to happen when they get above 300 pounds. When you can deadlift 300 pounds or more, that roughly 100-pound kettlebell does not feel quite as heavy. So neurologically, you're training your body to get heavier. So if you can find something that's even heavier than the bell you need to press, but definitely get comfortable with that. Do a push press. Sometimes, even if a single push press, you can do a 2-hand clean into a 2-hand push press to get that bell
hold
overhead.
It overhead.
Just hold it overhead. Teach your brain that this is not going to hurt you. Take away the threat and your body will move better. So don't underestimate that either. So what do we got now?
That's gold. We could just end now, dude.
We
Lift
could.
heavy and press heavy. All right, but let's talk about the three phases. So I mentioned the intro, and this is really going to be important for you to just kind of find some ways to get past this. You have the lower phase, the middle phase, and the lockout phase. In the lower phase, you had sent me something about overcoming inertia,
Mhm.
and it's one of your favorite things to do to quiz me on the word inertia. Um, and I'm gonna take a stab at it real quick, Roger, and I believe it is changing the direction of the way the bell is currently moving or pulling. So if it's stationary, you're moving it up. If
That's
it's
half
up,
right.
okay, dang.
It's
Do you got a book or something with this in it?
I do. I do. Um, inertia can be is equal to mass when you're looking at the equation, but from the practical the practical way to look at it from just a regular person's perspective is
Yeah,
inertia is resistance to change in motion. And that does cover if you're changing direction, that does count. But anytime the motion of the bell is changed, um, it's immediately or initially going to resist that change. So let's say you are at the bottom. This is the example I use, I think, in the book.
yeah,
Is you're at the bottom of a hill and you've got a boulder and you need to push it uphill. Well, initially that's not going to go well. It's going to be challenging. Maybe after a while, once you get it moving, if the slope is not too great, you'll be able to get it going. But at a certain point, the bell or the ball or the boulder rather rolling, now that it has motion, it's not going to want to stop moving. So let's say you take a break, right? You're about halfway up the hill and you want to have a Mountain Dew or something. I don't know why I chose that.
wow. What are you,
You want
13, trying to stay up all night? Come on.
I don't think I've had one of those in easily 20 years, but so so you want to take a break and you're trying to hold this boulder up and keep it from coming down. Inertia is going to make the bell want to keep moving. So
Yeah,
inertia is just resistance to change. So when we take that and we look at the bottom of the bell or the bottom portion of the press, you've done your clean, you've got it in the rack position. That bell does not want to move. So
yeah,
you want to do something to begin to help that motion happen. And there are a few things that we can do. One of them, for example, is this whole idea of bumping it with the torso or bumping it with the hip. So if I've got a bell in my right rack position and I move my right hip toward that bell, the right side of my torso is also going to lift a little bit, right?
and it gets it up. It starts that motion then.
It's starting that motion. Now, if I take my left arm and I even rock, I pull my left arm down, that's also going to get my right side of my torso moving. That's going to help get that bell up. That's going to help it get
Ah,
moving. And once you start moving the bell, you're going to get it into a position where it's more advantageous to lift, where your muscles are going to be, when we look at anatomy, when muscles are as short as possible, and they're going to be either as short or as long as possible when we look at this rack position. Um, Either way, it's once things are in the middle range when things get stronger. So we want to start changing these positions. So a little bit of bump there. Your test may not let you do that. It depends on how much you do it, but that may help you start getting the bell moving. That little bit of inertia, changing of inertia. The idea we talked about earlier, squeezing the lat. When you squeeze the lat, if I'm pulling my arm in super tight and I squeeze my lat, my fist pops up.
mm.
So not only am I creating the platform from the press, but I'm starting to create daylight between the kettlebell and my body. It's already starting to go up. So little things that you can do leaning is something that helps to overcome inertia. It will also help the balance of the bell stay a little bit heavier, or sorry, it'll help the balance of the bell be a little more favorable, so you can keep the bell over your foot.
Yeah, and push press, but that doesn't count as press for this
No,
sake. And
no,
also, you
but
should, but
but
it's
that's a
it
great
is a way.
example.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah.
It's totally a way. It's a way to teach yourself neurologically how to get stronger
Lift
in
off.
in the lift off, and you can even do a very slow lowering phase and get stronger that way. So you can find different things. You may even find too that you can modulate the amount that you're contributing with your push press. So maybe
Mhm.
your legs are doing a ton at first, and then maybe Maybe
Just
it's
a
just a
little.
very soft knee, and then you're just locking them out a little bit, and then eventually you don't need to do it at all.
Yeah, and that's for the strict press. And for the record, you don't always have to press your heaviest press for somebody else's certification satisfaction. So
Nope.
if you want to, if you're like, all right, I do want to press heavier, I don't care about any specific standards or anything, then use that torso bump with that off arm pull and get that inertia overcome. One more thing that I think was a pretty good one, and I know you've had success with this, is your isometric pin press. Can you explain that, and then how to set that up, how to do it, and what the benefit of that
Sure.
would be?
Pin presses are things that are very common in barbell training. It's very common with either overhead pressing, barbell overhead press, or a bench press. You can do it with deadlifts. Basically, you're changing the position from which the lift starts. So if you have a range of motion that is challenging for you, in this case, we're working on the bottom portion, then you can set up the rack, some kind of rack or some sort of device in order to challenge you in that position. In this case, we're looking, what I do is you could set it up somehow. You could rig it up to where the bell starts at a particular height. That doesn't really work for kettlebells, but what does for me anyway is I will find the position where I can set up a squat bar. And you've got to put weight on there. So for me, I'll put at least 200 pounds on there just to be safe. I don't want to push it and
Have it come
somehow
up.
knock it off. Yeah. So I'll find the right height. I'll set the pins at the right height, so my arm is completely pressed to my body. I want to start pushing in the most disadvantaged place possible, right? And then I will do an isometric contraction. I'll put a squat pad on the bar so it doesn't break my knuckles, and I'll drive my hand up into that for about 4 to 6 seconds. I don't want to go longer than that because I do want to follow this up with a successful press. So I will do the pin press at a particular height for a few seconds, again 4 to 6, and then I will immediately go to the bell that I'm going to press. So let's say I'm looking to press the 48. I will at least use a 36 or a 40, and then I will follow that pin press by a successful press. And what I'm looking to do is see if I feel stronger in that range of motion, and often I do. So I want to, in a sense, I want to prime my brain to feel stronger there, and then I want to reinforce that strength with a successful press.
Yeah, it's
And
sort of
then,
like, yeah, go ahead.
no, finish.
I was say it's sort of like lifting the heavy deadlift and then grabbing a subsequently lighter kettlebell, which is, even though the kettlebell is 108 pounds or whatever, and you did 315 pounds on the deadlift, it's going to feel lighter. Is that sort of the same thing?
To be honest, I don't know. I guess it would depend on your force output. What you're talking about is something called post-activation potentiation, which is
Yeah,
where
PAP.
where you're lifting something really heavy and then you're intentionally lifting something lighter. So I think you would have some carryover with force, but the short answer is I really don't know.
Okay.
But for me, I'm just thinking I'm rehearsing this thing. And if I rehearse something, I should get better at it. So if I'm
Yeah.
rehearsing that one phase of the press, I expect my brain to show up to that part, to recruit more motor units, basically give me more muscle fibers to help me out. And then my press is going to go up from there. So that's the idea. And then what I might do is, because squat racks are great and you can raise the pins, I might do a series of 3 or 4 of those and just have and work through just as even like, so the increments that you're demonstrating on camera are not quite as, I would go just one at a time. So I'm talking about like a half inch maybe. I want to go as low as I possibly can.
Different places. That way you're only working that lower phase. Because
Exactly.
it gets different in the middle phase, right?
It does, and that's why we're going to talk about that next. I have a feeling.
Damn, you stepped all over my transition.
I'm sorry.
That's good. All right, the middle is all about torso strength. Am I right?
All about no, but mostly yeah. I think that's where I think that's where most people fail.
That's where I fail. Okay. And you know this
tell the good people.
It's like this picture of me leaning to the side, moments of tiptoe rage.
What is tiptoe rage? Tell everyone what tiptoe rage is.
I think we were just, I don't know. I don't even know. We were just like trying to press heavy, and then I'm not getting it. And I get to a certain point. And I think I like run forward on tippy toes with the bell half in the air and like screaming mother effers everywhere. And
so when
finding out I'm not ready.
So for those of you who haven't figured this out by listening or watching, Jeremiah is a very sweet guy. He's very kind and he's very
Hmm.
patient, with a few exceptions. When things don't go well with electronics and we can't get a heavy press up, he turns into a
That's
demon.
pretty much it, actually.
Um, so we there was a press that he should have gotten up, and I don't remember what the bell was, but it wasn't getting there. It was really, really close, and he knew it was close, and instinctively, reflexively, he tried to get taller, because that's kind of how our brains are when they're super cool.
I was
He
trying to
tried to
overcome
get
that inertia
taller
at the top.
to to get the bell that last little bit up. What he didn't account for is his arm obviously moved with his body. And if he got
Yeah.
on his tiptoes and then dropped under, that might have worked, but that's not a press. That's kind of a weirdo jerk kind of thing. But anyway, that's what tiptoe
What's
rage
with all the
is.
name calling all of a sudden?
So
Yeah.
the
So let me just say that if you
sure.
don't have this torso strength and the exercise we're about to share, some things that work, you're gonna have a problem pressing super heavy. The period. It's just you're gonna end up like one of those flappy car sale guys. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
You're
Yep.
outside you're outside your legs. You have no way to get, even if you were bent or leaned over in the right position, you may not have the strength to push back underneath. So what can
Yeah.
we do, Roger?
Well, first of all, with the lean, if you are going to lean, and this is an important kettlebell technique. Period. Whenever you move, when you're doing kettlebell lifts, it's a good idea, at least with grind lifts, the slow lifts, to pull yourself into position. When you're lowering into a squat, don't drop, pull, right?
Mhm.
Then when you're pulling, when you're doing the eccentric or the lowering portion of the press, pull it down. When you're doing the lean, pull yourself into a lean. That way you're creating some tension so you can get back. And when you just kind of plummet off to the side and you just bend over, or you bend backwards into spinal extension is what that's called, then you're gonna run into some problems. So one is to be intentional with the lean that you are creating. Part of it goes back to stance, so staying within the proper margins, but then actually pulling yourself into the lean is a helpful technique. And then just preparing yourself to withstand, withstand the tension of the bell. If you look at the press as a frontal plane phenomenon, meaning going side to side, and it's not, that would be very, very reductive. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a big spiral, which would be what we call the transverse plane. But the look at it from the side to side dimensions. The bell is trying to push you back when you lean away. So you're doing a right press and you lean to the left. That bell wants to keep pushing you to the left. That's what mass does. It wants to keep you moving that way. So you need to find the strength on the muscles of the side of your body, your obliques, your abdominal wall, all that stuff, to be able to bend but not break, to be able to withstand that pressure from the bell and continue to stay underneath the press enough to get it overhead. And for me, I love a suitcase deadlift. I will use a barbell for it. I'll just find the right balance, the right grip in the middle, and I'll go all the way from the floor and then do a long hold at the top. My everything is just, my obliques will fire. I'll get super, super, super strong there. Two arm cleans, rack carries, overhead carries, anything that you can stay tight with that introduces stress to one side of your body. That's money there.
Mm.
There is one more thing too, and that is your lat strength. So when you get this big ball with a handle that wants to rotate, what will often happen is as you start to go into your press that wants to go up and behind you, that kettlebell will want to rotate, and it'll want to rotate away from you. And one of the actions that your lat can perform is what's called internal rotation at the shoulder. And it's almost like you're trying to use your shoulder to keep it in, almost like you're arm wrestling, right?
Yeah,
That
I
bell's
love
trying to
that.
break you. You do.
I do.
You do. So the bell's trying to bend you and break you and make you move out. You're trying to keep that shoulder turned in just enough until you get it high enough, and then you can turn out. So you need good lat strength for that. So really what we're looking at is patterns that can strengthen the sides, excuse me, the sides of your body. So obliques, lats,
So,
unilateral or one-sided work is great, but I love a good pullover with a cable or even with a kettlebell, just to get all of that front side strength strong. Because another common thing that people will do is they will want to go into extension, they'll want to bend back. So
yeah.
if you've heard of a hollow hold, things like dead bugs, or I love to do kettlebell pullovers, or I'll sequence a pullover with a dead bug. front side strength, lat strength, really, really effective for me. And that helps me stay tight in the press. And then, other things, even doing like rack squats can be really, really helpful. Moving that same one-sided load through time and space.
Yeah, and that's where that as you go back to handling the weight of the bell, if you're doing the rack squats with the 48 and on your right hand side, you're going to start to begin building that ability to control all those things Roger just talked about. Plus, you'll have cool quads. Now let's talk about the last step. It's the lockout.
Okay.
That's the glory moment. That's the moment we all been waiting for. The moment we overcome inertia. We used our solid side bend, but I just can't get that lockout. What do we do? Why is this happening to me?
Well, first of all, let's define some terms, because some people would take issue with calling this phase of the press the lockout, and I can agree. Again, I'm not one into terminology, as I don't really care. As long as we're talking about the same thing, that's what matters. There's something in the press called the sticking point, and for many people, it's when the handle of the kettlebell is about the level of the eyebrow, somewhere in there, maybe forehead,
Yeah.
right in that
right
region.
in there. It's always right
So
there.
once you
And
get
you're
past
like,
the sticking point, you should be able to lock out. Most it's very rare that someone can't do that. So when we're talking about that lockout phase, we're actually talking about the sticking point, because it is a slightly different issue than the side bend. And for some reason, well, I know what the reason is, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but when we look at the idea of torque generation, okay, we are moving a bell. We can't move a bell straight up and down. We have joints, like our shoulders are not little elevators that telescope straight up and down. So we need to move the bell around the shoulder and through the elbow. And what I've just defined is the length of a bone, the humerus. It has length. And as the one end of the humerus, namely the elbow, which attaches to the forearm, attaches to the hand, which holds the bell, as that moves away from the body, that
that's
distance
like a nursery rhyme, real quick. I was like, teach 2-year-olds how to know. All right, anyways.
As that happens, as distance increases between the joint or the pivot point of the shoulder and the center of mass of the bell, as that distance increases, you're going to get more torque. Gravity is going to be able to interact with the mass of the bell and exert more torque against you. And that's going to make the press harder. If you could find a way to see what the bell weighed, it would actually weigh more. The mass isn't going to change, but it's going to register as much, much harder. So for all intents and purposes, even though the terminology is not quite right, it's going to feel like it's much heavier during that phase of the bell. And that's usually what happens is the arm starts to get farther away, and what's called a moment arm is the longest. And moment arms are the longest when they're at 90 degrees. So if you were to take your arm and hold your elbow straight out from the shoulder, that's where your moment arm, whether it's in the front, 45 degrees, whatever, that's when torque is going to be the greatest.
And it's outside your foot, just saying.
Yeah.
First
Well, it does.
principle.
It absolutely. And that's another reason for the lean. But one other cool thing, see, you got me started now. One other cool thing about the lean is when you lean during the sticking point, what happens if you do this little experiment, if you put your arm up at 90 degrees, go ahead and do that for those watching. And then you lean. When you lean away, what actually ends up happening is the bottom of your arm gets closer to your body and you're changing that angle. So you're literally making the bell lighter. You're literally decreasing the torque, and then you can push and then lean back under it.
And then it pushes it the rest of the way. Here we go.
Yep. So your torso gets under the bell, and you lean away at let's call it the heaviest possible moment, and then you use your torso to kind of wedge underneath that bell, and suddenly a press that you couldn't press before, you can press. So this is what we're really talking about, is this lockout portion. So getting the lean down is really solid. You do need good oblique strength. You do need good lat strength. Otherwise, the bell will rotate too far away from you and you won't be able to get under it. But one drill that's really, really helpful is to play with the center of mass of the bell. So when you're looking at
manipulate atoms.
Yes, I will, so to speak. So when we look at the center of mass of a cast iron bell, okay, we've got the handle and we've got the globe. So the center of mass of the bell, let's assume it's completely round, even though it's not. It's going to be flat on the bottom, probably flat to some degree on one side. But let's assume it's completely round. you're going to have the center of mass directly in the middle, but there's extra mass in the handle. So the center of mass that would be in the middle of that globe needs to move up. And it's going to move up to the degree of the amount of mass that is in the handle. So if you've got a really, really thick handle, then that center of mass is going to travel up even more, right? If it's really thin, it's going to travel up less. So what we do by doing a few different drills, so you can do this with you can do this by using magnets. I've got some, magnets that go onto the kettlebell. I've got about 3 extra kilos that I can put in different places to manipulate the mass. But a stacked press is a good way to do this. So let's say let's say you're stuck at, let's say, a 40 kilo press, and you're having a hard time at that sticking point, then you can take a couple of bells and see if you can get near, let's say, a 36 or even a 40 eventually with that stacked press, where you're actually going to stack one bell on top of the other. You're going to put both handles together and you're going to clean it up very carefully. And so if I wanted to do a 24 kilo stack press, I would get 2 12 kilo bells and stack them up. What I'm doing is I have the same mass, but I am actually elevating the center of mass because of just the shape that it's in. And when I'm elevating the center of mass, what I'm doing is I'm raising the sticking point. So I'm increasing. So when normally it's at the eyebrow, I'm actually raising it up even higher. So if I have a particular problem with that sticking point, I want to spend more time grinding against sticking points. So as I continue to do my stack press, then maybe now I'm using a 12 and a 20, right? Now I'm starting to move bigger masses, but they're stacked in a way where I'm spending more time concentrating on the thing that I'm having a hard time with. So the stack press, assuming you can do it safely, it can be hard on your grip.
I was going to say, you got to have some beefy hands sometimes. But if you're like using a 20 and a 12, I mean, yeah, I guess if you have a thinner handle and thicker handle, it probably lines up all right.
I have strong hands, but I don't have big hands.
Yeah, you might not be able to like close around. You probably just like claw it.
That's it. That as long as you can kind of close your hand, you're fine. Do it outside where you can drop the bells and get your feet away. But the idea is in this situation, if you're having a hard time from the sticking point on up, the stack press is a great drill because you're spending more time working through that range that you don't do well in. And, going back to the lower part of the press, if you have a hard time, that initiation strength, just getting the press up, you can move the center of mass down. You can get your magnets, or you can get ankle weights, whatever. You can get a band or a cable. That's awkward, so I don't recommend that. But you can find things to.
But you've done it.
I have done it.
I've seen it.
I have seen it. It's just
I've watched him work through all this process. Everybody.
It's at a certain point, what I have done is I've actually tied a smaller kettlebell to a bigger kettlebell, and in certain cases it works. In certain cases, I almost
you got to be handy with knots.
I almost altered my male anatomy. So you got to be careful. But for me, the things that work the best, what worked the best was actually to lower it was 2 ankle weights. Because I had one attached to the handle, and then I had the other one attached to the one attached to the handle, and I even at one point got a chain and wrapped the chain around. So this ankle weight hung well below my elbow, and it swung around a little bit, which also made it hard. But that lower center of mass made it challenging to really get that bell up. So it's how do you make the bell hard and the range of motion that you need? That's the basic idea. That's all I have to say about that.
I think that's good. That all sounds good. So we have, overcoming the inertia in the lower phase. We got some tips for that. That I like that off arm pull or that hip bump if you need to, and the pin press. That middle torso section is going to be about that strength there, getting strong there. Maybe even holding the kettlebell on the right hand rack side and pressing with the left, sort of vice versa. And then finally getting that past that sticking point, lockout, whatever you want to call it. And there you have it. You've pressed the heaviest press you've ever pressed. And if you give a like, you'll press that guaranteed. I promise. But anything else, Roger?
I would love to see what works for people. If people work with these drills, I'd really like to hear about it in the comments.
Yeah,
And
if
we
you have
did,
other drills that have worked for you, share them too, because
please.
the more the merrier. Like, we don't know it all.
We also just got requested for an episode in one of the comments, and guess what? We're going to do it.
Yeah.
Someone wanted us to do an episode on the overspeed eccentric, and we're going to do that. We're going to put our own spin on it, but we're going to do an
But
episode on that. So don't be afraid to ask.
yeah,
We love talking about this stuff, and it gives us ideas. It actually makes our jobs easier.
yeah. And the fact of the matter is, all we care about is people get better at kettlebells, and because you've done a lot for our lives, and they can do a lot for your life too.
Yes,
And
sir.
that being said, download the Bells app because it helps you get better at kettlebells. It'll do the work for you. Maybe not, but it'll be there for you when you need it most. Anyways, that's it. Thanks, Roger. Stay strong, everybody.
Bye, everybody.